Should I be looking at the camera or you?
Really up to you. If you, I think the camera will be good because I'll be here anyway. So like yes. And if you are making a documentary, looking at the camera will be more helpful.
Right.
Like you're directly speaking. Yes. So for the purpose of the recording, can you please say your name and that you're like a member of Clean Air? Just like briefly say like what your name is so we can know who the person is.
Sure. I'm Jim Jones. I'm currently the board chair at Clean Air Coalition. I started that 2 years ago, and before that I was just a member but active in the Tonawanda Coke campaign and the Huntley campaign. And before that I was the town engineer in the town of Tonawanda, working on the waterfront projects, the planning, several construction projects, and you know, when I don't know if you just want me to get into it.
Yes. Yeah, that was kind of along the same line with my first question, like, oh, like where are you from, like how, like what did you like, just learning a little bit about your experiences and how did you get involved with Clean Air? Yeah.
So you know, Clean Air started around 2008 2009, probably even before, with some residents being concerned about what they're smelling and how they're feeling, and trying to put a correlation between those physical health issues and some of the industrial pollution that was going on. And so they started asking questions and not getting very far with the questions, and then they decided to do some air sampling. I think they learned about air samples and just taking a 5-gallon bucket and collecting that and then sending it to a lab and paying for that analysis, looking for particular components, and they found benzene, and those signatures were reflective of the operations at Tonawanda Coke and basically burning fossil fuels, and it led to there. And then with those data results, then they began petitioning the Department of Environmental Conservation from New York State to do some more thorough and comprehensive air collection, air sampling, air study, and they produced the Tonawanda Air Quality Report in 2009, which was kind of a keystone document, and that kind of led to heightened awareness of the operations of Tonawanda Coke, and not just Tonawanda Coke, but it was Huntley, and you know, Tonawanda had at the time I think 53 Title V air permits from the DEC, which are, you know, fairly significant emissions, and those coupled with 2 interstate highways and the toll booth, so a lot of mobile sources of pollution, a lot of single entity sources of pollution, and the aggregate of that air quality was really not addressed in any regulations for federal or state. So, you know, we brought it to a lot of people's attentions that we need to look at this more holistically. And, you know, at the time of the town engineer, I was just kind of on the fringe back in the early 2000s, or the early 2010s rather, and but would go to meetings, go to Clean Air meetings, attend with Erin Haney when she was the executive director, and subsequently Rebecca Newberry at the time, and now Chris Borowski, who is the current executive director.
Yeah, so there are just a lot of great points I can go off of.
Yeah, I can just go off on tangents.
Yeah, so I guess like starting from like a more personal angle, like talking about like your personal experience amongst all these like larger movements of activism. So so I guess like originally, like, are you from Buffalo? Like, what got you interested in like environmental issues? Like, how did you become like the town engineer? Kind of those more like personal experiences.
So some more background on myself. I actually grew up in a suburb in Clarence, on a small farm. My father was a carpenter, and we had a couple of horses and a small farm, a couple of cows, a couple of chickens, and you know, we would operate the farm just to sustain the little bit of livestock we had, amazingly just to feed the horses. And we rode a lot there. So I appreciated the outdoors. I lived outdoors a lot as a kid, rode horses outside, and spent a lot of times in the woods, in the forests around my house. And in Clarence back then, it was fairly agricultural, and just really appreciated that quality of life. And then I liked building because my father was a carpenter, and we basically did a lot of things to operate the farm. And then I didn't like high school. I didn't like school. Didn't like math. So ended up joining the Army and becoming operating engineer. I operated heavy equipment in the Army and learned some construction. Operating bulldozers and driving tractor trailers and graders and loaders and forklifts and pans and things like that. And I was stationed in Fort Polk, Louisiana, and Schaffenburg, Germany, and kind of had a penchant for construction, or civil construction. And I worked construction after I got out of the Army, and then went to college. Met my current wife, and she encouraged me to attend college, and I did in civil engineering, and I graduated, and then I started to lean towards traffic engineering, and got a job with the town of Tonawanda because we were doing a traffic study there, and then just became more involved with operating a municipality and the public works side of how that happens, and then seeing the work that needed to be done and how the work was done, and having that engineering background, just trying to cut to the chase and see, fix things. This is going how to best do that. So, and then kind of moved into the planning, so we weren't spinning our wheels trying to get some developments done or some reconstruction projects done, like rebuilding roads and things like that. So the planning brought me into the fold for doing more planning along the waterfront, because our waterfront was all industrial, and there was only about 500 yards of public access at Aqualane Park, and not having public access and having these legacy industries there, a lot of them were declined or defunct or abandoned. There was a couple still viable ones. Tonawanda was still viable. Huntley was still viable and operating, as was United Refining and the tank farms, NOCO, fuel distribution. And we had also had radioactive material from the Manhattan Project in our own municipal landfill, and in another landfill called the Seaway landfill, which is adjacent to the 190 and the Grand Island Bridge. So I think probably around 2010, 2013, we started working with EPA and New York State Department of Health, New York State DEC, and trying to work with the industries to get them to entertain more sustainable methods of operating their processes. And that was a collaborative effort between the EPA and the DEC and many organizations. Organized Labor and Clean Air was a convener of that, and made a lot of relationships, and I really enjoyed that. And I saw that providing that opportunity for a healthier, more sustainable way of life was the only way to move forward, and to provide public access to the Niagara River and our waterways, and to provide healthier environments. I was interested in forestry and things like that, and wild and gardening and plant life, and there's definitely ways to get that done. So that's where my passion is. So.
That's amazing. And you have been being with Clean Air for like such a long time, since the very beginning it was
Right.
founded.
Yeah. Probably around 12 or 13 years now.
Yeah. So like, did you see like Clean Air go through?
Oh,
Like,
Clean
any
Air has
changes?
evolved,
Yeah.
and has become a leader. They are a leader. You know, there's a lot of uh, misinformation and misgivings about the work that Clean Air has done, because we have been more on the advocacy and activist side. So calling out things that needed to be called out, like the unhealthy operations of the industries. You know, a lot of politicians and leaders in the community felt offended that we would broach such a subject and call out people who were, you know, providing jobs to the community and paying taxes and things like that. But at the same time, they were doing it with no sense of environmental control or sustainable operations, and they were very blatant about their waste. And you know, coming up in a farm, you know, you want to keep things you know, in order. You know, you want to leave no trace and have a small footprint on your life. And that so, you know, we were calling those people out and bringing them to the minds of the regulators, because regular politicians and local politicians were not supportive of us. So we have a bit of a stigma, and I think we have made significant advances by moving beyond that stigma. And now, you know, years later, people are seeing the work that we have done and are extremely appreciative, but they're still reluctant to believe in us. But if it wasn't for Clean Air moving forward and pushing these issues, we would still be under a huge cloud of oppressive air quality issues, water quality issues, and then partners like, you know, Waterkeeper, the West York Land Conservancy, Buffalo Niagara Land Trust, the Niagara River Greenway, you know, the Sierra Club. These people who are also looking to provide healthier communities is essential.
Exactly. I'm just gonna keep that noise in the background. I think it will be fine. It won't be captured. And yeah, so I feel, yeah, I definitely agree. Like, people have. Did you feel like when you started to get involved with Clean Air, did you feel like, oh, I didn't like fully trust this organization? Have you gone through that stage as well, or were you just like knew Clean Air directly and then just
Well, you know, I was more of a subversive supporter. Being a government official, you know, as a town engineer, a licensed engineer, my employer was a municipality, a government entity, or, you know, sort of on the regulatory side. So I felt constrained and not at liberty to be as strong as an advocate as I probably should have. But I always felt like I was trying to shepherd planning documents like the comprehensive plan, the waterfront land use plan, the waterfront landscaping plan, even the latest rezoning, the town rezoning, trying to move those documents, those critical key planning tools that municipalities can use to start to encourage healthy change. That was more of a foundational shift that I felt I was more involved with, the kind of behind the scenes, you know. So I wasn't always necessarily vocal as an activist should be until I, you know, retired.
Yeah, that's great.
And even before then, you know.
Yeah, and I feel like being an activist doesn't necessarily mean you have to be super vocal about everything the entire time. It can also be, yes, as long as you are supporting the cause. It's pretty great. Yeah. So I know you are very involved with like the Tonawanda, like all the river watchdogs, all that campaigns. So like how did you like get involved with those campaigns? Is it because you were just like started with them so you got more involved?
Well,
Or was
that's one thing, being involved with Tonawanda Clean Air for, almost 12 years now. After I retired, I retired in 2019, just before COVID. And then I decided to create an engineering company so I could do some engineering for Go Bike Buffalo, which is a alternative transportation advocacy group here. And that was my passion, was to provide healthier transportation choices as opposed to single occupancy vehicles. And that's obviously inextricably tied with air quality and land use and uh, then just before COVID, or during COVID, I came on as a board member at Clean Air, just because of the shifting sands that was happening in a lot of not-for-profits during COVID, during the pandemic. A lot of not-for-profits moved people around, and they're still moving people around because with the former president's change in the tax law, basically creating standardized deductions on taxes. I think people's giving to non-for-profits is significantly down because they don't have to report deductions anymore. That's one thing, plus all the other stresses that are on folks' minds with climate change, and fossil fuels, and just the strife in the political arena. People have a hard time focusing on you're either all in and trying to do the right thing, or they're in total denial. So it's one or the other right now. So, and I didn't want to go to the total denial side. That's just ridiculous. So
Absolutely. So like that's how you got involved with more with like the Tonawanda and all
yeah.
those.
So having the background with the potential developments and the shaping of how we envisioned Tonawanda waterfront to be, where we wanted to be in 10 or 20 or 30 years in Tonawanda, working on those shaping documents like the comprehensive plan and the rezoning and the land use plan. That was a natural fit for me to stick with the campaigns for Tonawanda Coke and Huntley. And then subsequently in 2019, I also became chairman of the Rotary Club in Tonawanda. So the Rotary Club, that our focus there is healthy communities, connecting people to build power, to provide quality of life initiatives for the community, to make the community more wholesome, not wholesome, but to make the community more vibrant, and to make people want to engage with their community and to take part in their community and to help lift a hand with cleaning up the waterfronts, doing pickups, garbage pickups, like Earth Day cleanups, things like that. It's a start for folks to get involved, and instead of just sitting back and hoping someone else does it. So we're trying to get more people engaged, and we're partnered with the Niagara River Greenway, and they do a lot with the waterfront, obviously, in the Niagara River, because the Niagara River is where we get all our water for drinking. We have a water treatment plant at the town of Tonawanda. There's Erie County Water Treatment Plant also in the town of Tonawanda, and just downriver is the water plant for North Tonawanda, and then Niagara Falls, obviously, and Niagara County water. So the pollution in the Niagara River is everyone's concern, and it's that's another thing that Clean Air has evolved from, just being an air focused advocacy group, because it is all interrelated. social justice and worker justice, labor justice, um, uh,
Yes.
environmental justice. Um, it all works together, and you can't just work on one. You just can't operate in one silo. And so, we started out with our foundations in air quality, but obviously it's inextricably related to the other environmental challenges that we face, and the social and racial justices and challenges that we face. Obviously we are visitors here. We're still visitors from the people who lived here 400 or 500 years ago, and we've treated this area as a disposable, um, uh, you know, as a disposable entity, and that's our biggest wrong in this community, is just treating the earth like it's that it's here, and it's not here to stay. Leaving nothing for our future. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. And do you think, yeah, because you're involved with so many different like organizations, work campaigns, do you anticipate like continuing your work on these campaigns like in the future, like in the upcoming years?
Oh,
like,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, my work in the future is probably going to be more focused on continuing the work at Clean Air, continuing the work, trying to get people to work together and communicate and collaborate, and to provide hope for a future, and to provide a sustainable economy too, and a place where people want to live, and a place that can stay habitable, with climate refuge issues, extreme weather events all around the world. So far, knock on wood, we are fairly safe from that, but not entirely safe. I remember a 7-inch rainfall back in 1996, and that was devastating for the area. So it can happen, and it will happen again. And how we react and how we respond, a lot of times it's just, that's the way it is, or we didn't plan, or we don't choose it to be a priority. We have other things that we think are priorities, and that's hard to deal with. That's really hard to deal with.
So yeah, so like, and also just like, besides looking into the future, let's like also reflect upon like what all like our experiences in the past. So is there any like particular like memorable experiences, like moments during like your campaign organizing? It could be with Clean Air, it could be with any other organization, or just like anything, any person you met that is extremely memorable to you.
Well, obviously the people who worked at Clean Air have all been profound caretakers and profound champions of what we do here in environmental justice. And I've been growing a deeper appreciation every day for that work, and for those people who are that brave to stand up and call it out, because now there's more people standing up and calling it out, and that's what we need. Is we need more people standing up and calling it out, and speaking truth to power. And the truth is this environmental injustice is the death of the planet. So our biggest wins, obviously, if we want to call them wins, are Tonawanda Coke, and the Huntley plant, and the removal of the toll barriers. And we were the first to bring in participatory budgeting into the West New York vernacular, where we start talking about what is this thing that we talk about. This is tax money that's talked about being used collaboratively, as opposed from a top-down standpoint, where we vote in a certain representative to say this is what we do with our money, you know, because we've lost faith and trust in those individuals, because they get into these positions and they find themselves hamstrung, they find themselves hobbled and unable to achieve even the slightest gains. So you know, that's just how our political climate has evolved. It's just to a point of almost paralysis, and we've made some big gains, but then when those gains are to a point where you're trying to like the New York Climate Protection Act, it's a fantastic vision, but we don't have the tenacity, we don't have the consensus, and we don't have the leadership to really bring it to where it needs to be. So that's a huge change, and people lose faith, and people lose energy and their spirit, and that is one of our biggest challenges. At least that's one of my challenges.
Yes.
It's just to maintain hope.
Yes.
But there is hope, you know.
Exactly. Yeah, I totally agree. And Rachel was talking to me a few days ago about like when they started a job here at Clean Air. Their like previous like supervisor was telling them how they would get gaslighted quite a lot when they were working this job. So you need to learn how to
Yes.
celebrate the small wins,
Right.
and like learn to do that. So would you say you get better at doing that over the years, or like what are some advice you might?
No, I've been getting better at celebrating the small wins, because I'm, you know, that's a critical point of life, is you have a hesitancy to celebrate those small wins because there's such a mountain ahead of you, and you think, how can I stop and take a breath when there's so much to climb, you know? But when you do stop and take a breath, that gives you that much more energy to continue the work, you know, and seeing the people who are engaged with Clean Air, and the people who work at Clean Air and the members, they help provide energy and spirit, because, you know, we are moving together as much as we can and partnering with as many people who have a similar struggle, that cross silo effect, where we build those connections. That's where our future is, you know, because we can't do it alone.
Exactly. And also, so talking about like all the different members of Clean Air, have you get to connect with different members when you're at the organization, or like did you get to like know a lot of different people from different?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So in Clean Air.
Oh my gosh! Careful.
Oops.
Oh my god. Oh, this is horrific.
Sorry.
Oh my gosh. No, this was.
Well, I was starting to slump on the chair.
Are you okay?
It's on the blooper reel.
I will move it.
I'm all right.
I will just move this. I'll just put this down for a little bit. No, it fell last week as well because it was just really not that stable.
Yeah.
And it's like way heavier than I expected, so it's like really dangerous.
Oh,
Oh my god.
sorry about that.
No. It's like, I'm so sorry. Like, yeah.
It's ironic that J.D. Crane tried to hit me from behind. That's symbolic.
Yes.
You know, that's J.D. Crane, and he's trying to beat me from his deathbed. You know,
Exactly.
But it ain't happening. He's down on the ground now. So
Very
fuck
great.
you, J.D. Crane.
Would you like water or anything before we
No,
go?
I'm good.
Okay, sounds good. Oh my god. So yeah. So speaking of like the members, I like.
Oh yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So the members, you know, it's amazing. You know, I meet them most when we have our meetings. I don't directly interact with a lot of them because I'm not out. I haven't gone out and done canvassing yet. But I've been to many meetings, and I've met so many people who are struggling with health issues. And, Erie County, New York is really an unhealthy county. I mean, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation does an annual health study in New York State. And of New York State's 62 counties, Erie County has been ranking around 56th lowest health outcomes, with diabetes, with obesity, heart disease, you name it. And we're very unhealthy. And what are those health outcome? Why are we so unhealthy? And those questions are really challenging to answer. One of the resultant outcomes of the huge fine against Tonawanda was a $24 million settlement, and about 12 million went to New York State to do a 10-year health study to try to build correlation between people in the communities, their health, and signatures with the pollutants from the industries. And that's an ongoing effort. We have not been involved with that. That's kind of a closed silo in and of itself. My wife and I participate in that health study. We've done blood samples, we've done DNA samples, urine samples, just an anonymous, we don't get test results or anything like that, but they take our data and our health history, and it goes into a large database to see what corollaries they could come up with. So I don't know what year we are in that study, but that is an area of research that I think is kind of a leader. Even though it's a closed system right now and it's not that transparent, we're hopeful that some good outcomes come from it, because a lot of I just had a story with a member. I think he's a member, and his partner is just gotten a diagnosis of a rare blood cancer, and she's asking questions. Why did I get this? Why am I like this after all these years? Why am I sick? And so many people are sick, and God, I am not, so far I'm healthy and I want to stay that way. But, we don't have to be this unhealthy. And, what are those things? And we know things are contributing that to air quality and water. Obviously, the PFAS in the water is a huge issue right now. Air quality has been and always will be an issue in our lives. And how is that attributed to our health outcomes, and plus our lifestyles, that is another manifestation of poor environment, not feeling safe or comfortable to go outside, to go out for a walk, to stay isolated, to be socially inactive. That those are all factors that attribute to poor health, and we want to be healthier. A lot of our leaders in clean air have loved ones who they've lost due to poor health, and why is that? It's not the same in other states, but we have, like I said before, we have 53 Title V air permitted facilities just in Tonawanda.
Yes.
That's not cool.
Yeah.
That's just not cool.
And a lot of those facilities also have expired
permits
as well.
That's the other thing is, from a regulatory standpoint, the resources to stay on top of these industries who now are facing expired permits, they are not even attempting to renew their permits. They're continuing to operate under their somehow under expired permits. and nobody wants to touch them because they're like a, you know, they're paralyzed. The government is paralyzed to do anything, and that's, they don't have the resources, you know, or the leadership or the tenacity to stay on top of this. And you know, and it's that's a tough situation to be in, where you don't have the regulatory capacity. You know, in one respect, you want to be free, and you want to have liberties, and to lead championed lives. But how do you do that when you have so many entities who are providing a negative outcome on your life, like these industries, you know, and not caring, and not tidying up after themselves, just being extremely careless, extremely lazy, and extremely selfish.
Right, exactly. And also, I feel like Buffalo has gone through a lot of just changes, like over the years as well. Like in general, like there are different, like people are like living in different neighborhoods, have like moved around, they have like things have improved, some things has gotten worse. So what would you say, like what would you like, what are just like your opinions on those, like I guess general changes, and like what do you think are some like major challenges Buffalo is like facing like right now in 2024?
Well, housing is a big issue, and you know, you want a healthy place to live. You want an affordable place to live. You want to be able to live where you can work and play, and have that first and second and third place in your life. The first place being your home, the second place being your work, and the third place being where you find your energy and your spirit. And doing that in the Western New York region, where we do have a somewhat less risky climate right now, so to speak, climate refuge, that could be a double-edged sword, where you know, we're starting to guard our resources. You know, you want to share what you can, and but you don't, you know, how do you move forward in that? I don't know. But the population change, it's been fairly static. I think some of the municipalities have lost a little bit of population, and Buffalo has gained a little bit of population, but that's because of new Americans, I think, coming to Buffalo to seek new lives and new opportunities. A lot of people have left seeking better opportunities, but those are like sinking sand, those opportunities around the country. So I think that ebb is starting to change back. You know, I'm hopeful that people will want to stay here and maybe live here and invest in a healthy lifestyle, and invest in healthy communities, and invest in healthy processes, you know.
Yeah, and also I feel like from what you've talked about, a lot of things I'm hearing is that like development is always this like, it's not a linear process. It's always like a back and forth. Like we made some progress, someone pushed back, and then like it's always that kind of process.
Yeah.
So how do you navigate that process? Do you recall any like experiences, like any particular moments when you feel that, oh, like there's this pushback? How do we navigate that situation?
So the development in this area, it seems to be only done by large, well-resourced, myopic developers. They focus on their own selves and their own self-worth, and that's not a great way to stabilize and rehabilitate the land that we have. You know, there's still a lot of sprawl going on, and that sprawl is antithetical to healthy communities and environmental justice, because it takes so many resources to build roads and utilities and infrastructure with low density, more miles traveled. Everyone has to get into a car to go get a gallon of milk or a cup of coffee. If you want to go out and socialize, may have to drive, and that creates other inherent risks when you're driving and socializing. You know, there's always risks there, and I don't know where I was going with that. Oh, development. I got an example. So we built this in Tonawanda. We had this large tract of land. It's about 90 acres, called the North Youngman Commerce Center. It was near 2 Mile Creek, and it was a soil borrow pit when they built the interstate highway. So they took the soil, because it was all clay, and they built the highway with it, the embankments. And so it's always been this fallow land, and the town for decades tried to get developers to come in and build something there. And we finally got a developer to come in, but we spent a lot of money building infrastructure. Basically end up being like a long driveway to this one factory, and that ended up being just a huge waste of time. I think we would have been better just planting trees, trying to rehabilitate the soil, and plant and reinforce reforestation of these industrial properties. I mean, there's this compulsion that we face, that we have to redevelop, grow, and that is a compulsion. You don't necessarily have to grow unless there is a reason. A lot of this development is done on speculation and hope that someone will come in and pay money. But a lot of time these buildings are built like shells, and they're hoping someone comes in, or they build something for a short-term tenant, and all kinds of tax incentives are provided to them, and then they're gone, and we are left holding the bag. And this tract of development that we did is just a big boondoggle. There was wetlands displaced, wetland relocation, invasive species, stormwater issues, traffic issues, accessibility issues, and for a transient workforce that comes and goes, and the operations are really not providing a lot of local jobs and a lot of local economy. It's kind of a panacea, because you're trying to build these things on speculation, and the energy it takes to sustain development and sustain growth is a panacea. That's where small growth, small development, collaborative work, that's our future, is working together. Go fix up a building, get a bunch of friends together, and fix a building up, or some people who are good at electrical work, some good people who are good at plumbing, and do the work yourselves, instead of waiting for a big developer or a big grant to do it yourself. And the ability to build houses. I mean, we build houses for centuries without a developer, and these. I'm not the only one talking about it. I mean, there's Smart Growth America. There's Congress for New Urbanism, Strong Towns. They're all seeing this as a change in the way land use is being treated in the U.S.
Yeah, exactly. And as you said, like, a lot of those development are going to be speculative. So you are kind of like imagining like a more like a more like imaginary worldview of like how things should be, how things should work.
Contrived.
Yes. So yeah, which is, as you mentioned, is like it's very hopeful, very amazing if we think through that philosophy of like development instead of the usual like model of industrialization, like continued economic progress. Yes.
Isolated.
Yes.
Isolated, and there's no social fabric to the development that's occurring. Very little social fabric, and that loss of social fabric is one of the biggest health detriments I think we face. Being able to trust each other and talk to each other and support each other. That's a big challenge.
Exactly. So like in working towards all these goals of yours of like working toward that better, like more hopeful like economy or like world, what was some like one step that you will take next, or like a few things you will do next?
Well,
like to work toward
the rezoning in Tonawanda, that was a big effort to start to stem the tide in how we develop, how we evolve, as our buildings get older, as our housing stock dwindles, as our population shifts. How do we build our environments more sustainably, more mindfully? So the zoning is the biggest tool in the toolbox for local communities, and without having to depend on the state or larger entities, the federal government or the state government. It's a little bit of feudalism, I guess, but is trying to at least be more mindful of how our own communities evolve, but not be restrictive, to provide a welcome space where people want to be, all people, not just white people, or wealthy people, or people who are of a certain position in the spectrum, to be more welcoming and of everyone.
Yeah, exactly. So perfect place to kind of finish up my questions. Do you have anything in your mind that you want to mention in the interview?
Well, the things that I've been talking about are a reflection of how clean air has evolved over the past 10 years. Yeah. We started out with a laser-like focus on Tonawanda Coke, but as we move forward and we work with more and more people, we see more and more struggle that we share, and it's not just in air. It's in water. It's in labor. It's in the workforce. It's in transportation. It's all interconnected, and our vision is broadening, but we still don't have the resources, so we're still small. But I think our impact in the West New York area is probably one of the more significant impacts of any small organization in West New York, because we have made huge strides adversarially, but now folks are breathing easier now because of clean air, and that's figuratively and literally breathing easier because of the forging work that clean air has forged ahead in doing. And it wasn't pleasant. It's not pleasant work, but I think everyone is grateful for a healthier, cleaner environment as we're moving forward, and other agencies, other community-based organizations have evolved on the principles of the work that Clean Air has done. The leadership here has been phenomenal, and we'll keep it like that.